Welcome to our AI Unplugged Without Borders video podcast series, part of the Transatlantic AI Exchange. We are kicking off a new era of knowledge sharing with our move to video podcasts. Here, you will get to hear from experts in a relaxed setup, diving into the nuts and bolts of deep tech and artificial intelligence. This shift to a more visual and flexible format means that you can tune in whenever and wherever it suits you best, bringing the world of AI to life through dynamic storytelling. Now, get ready for a lineup of fascinating talks on deep tech and AI. And I see you at the next session here in the AI Unplugged Without Borders. Now, today, the topic is the end of enterprise software as a service, navigating the generative AI shift for VCs and founders. I sat down in San Francisco's famous Battery Club with Marco Marinucci, the general manager and founder of Essentia Ventures. He also co-founded Hello Ventures in 2016 and managed the fund from 2018 on for 5 years, achieving 2 IPOs and 5 M&A exits to world-renowned companies like Google, Apple, Ford, Umbrella, and more. During our conversation, we also found out that we grew up only minutes apart in Germany and worked for the same company in our previous lives. Now, Marco is a seasoned engineer and an investor, where he leverages his profound understanding of both the traditional automotive sector and the dynamic Silicon Valley startup ecosystem and mindset. With a background in electrical engineering from Stuttgart and an MBA, Marco has the rare ability to blend technical expertise with sharp business insights, a trait he honed during the tenure at the founder and leader of Hello Ventures at the time. There, he achieved remarkable success with a 40% net IRR and 5 exits ranging from 200 million to 1.5 billion, and closed a lot of money for the LPs. At Essential Ventures, Marco builds on the strong foundation established at Hello Ventures, targeting early-stage investments in the industrial and physical industries. His approach is characterized by a combination of strategic foresight and a keen understanding of market dynamics. He believes in active engagements with portfolio companies, providing crucial support in areas like go-to-market, strategies, and industrialization. This philosophy underpins Essentia Ventures' mission to drive financial returns while fostering industry advancements and innovation. I am your host. My name is Thomas Neubert, born and raised in Germany as well, as I mentioned before. And I'm a longtime entrepreneur living here in beautiful Silicon Valley for over 33 years. And I'm also the founder of the Transatlantic AI Exchange. Marco, thank you very much for taking the time for a nice chit-chat. This is a fantastic setting, I have to say. We are here at the famous Battery Club in San Francisco at a nice, quiet green room. And we chatted a little bit before. The reason why I really wanted you to join the podcast series is you have some very interesting backgrounds and a good track record. And I have to say, for the record, if peers of yours recommending you to talk to me because of your traction with some of the investments that you have made in the past, that's a big compliment from your peers. So you can take that as a big compliment. We agreed when we chatted a little bit about the topic of this conversation Obviously, the audience is the entire transatlantic AI exchange ecosystem. There's research, there's corporations, VCs, startups. Today, I think it's a little bit of a mixture of VCs and startup founder mentality, trends in the market, the way you see it. The title for today, as we both agreed, is The End of Enterprise SaaS, Navigating the GenAI Shift for VCs and Founders. It's a mouthful, but you have a really good, strong opinion about it, and I can't wait to hear it. Before we go there, maybe a little bit of a quick summary in your own words, what you have learned in your previous job as the managing director of the Hella Ventures. That's where your traction also is pretty impeccable in regards to exits and companies that you picked. Then in the middle of a downturn or semi-downturn market, you had the guts to go on your own. Heads up for that. That's gutsy. I appreciate that. That's really cool. So in your own words, I would like to hear a little bit about the learnings and the takeaways by being here, working with the Europeans, cultural things and, speed and agility and the usual stuff. What are the biggest takeaways that you took with you from the learnings, the good, the bad, and the uglies? And to give us or give the audience also some interesting experiences. How did you pick these companies? What are you looking for? If any VC, not VCs, if any startups right now are listening, how do they get your attention? Tell us a little bit more about all of that.
Okay, let's do one at a time because otherwise I'll forget the second question.
Okay.
The biggest takeaways from Hella Ventures. That's a big question. Biggest takeaways are, I would say, one thing that I found very astonishing throughout the entire experience as a corporate VC is that there's so much opportunity for VCs, for CVCs that I think often is untouched because it is more difficult to be a corporate VC and to be successful.
Okay.
Because you do have to, in the long run, maybe some funds, our corporate VC funds, in the short run can be only financial. But in the long run, if there is no strategic benefit, why is this company going to continue doing that? Yeah. And so you do have to agree with internal stakeholders on, how you can support them, what they find interesting. But you also have to learn to navigate, okay, when you hear a no from them, is it because they have no time? Is it because they don't want to? Is it because they have legit reasons why this isn't a great idea? Or what is the fundamental underlying motivation? Why they support you on they don't?
And this is more only the finance side of the house or the business units who own the products, engineering and product management.
Exactly. I think fundamentally that is a huge attractor and a huge advantage as a CVC if you figure that piece out.
Yeah.
Because you can be literally a nobody, show up in Silicon Valley and people in, the best companies in the world with the best VCs will take your money. And let's be humble, not because of you, or because of me, but because of the brand name and the possibilities that come with it. Yeah. So what do you like? That was my biggest lessons learned and takeaway was, if you get that part right, everything else is downstream from there. But that part requires a lot of work because you're working fundamentally against forces of, literally forces of nature, psychology, organizational behavior, organizational structures, organizational incentives, all of that works against you. And one mistake can basically mean the end of that entire adventure. So it is very time consuming. It is very, it's very stressful, but especially from people from Europe, from Asia, from, basically places on earth that are not Silicon Valley, that otherwise wouldn't have a chance to become or to ingrain into this culture of VC and entrepreneurs. It's a unique opportunity to get into it. And to me, it was from the very beginning pretty clear, this is the only thing I can contribute. There's enough money here. There's, I just don't have the network at the beginning. So that's the only thing where I can actually help. And that's what I focused the most on. Like basically provide a lot of clear quality service to the business units, meaning we would never send a company's pitch deck just like that to someone. Say, hey, what do you think? Okay. Like, I mean, obviously, what do you expect they're going to say? Like, they're not trained in VC. To them, culturally, it probably is going to look very flashy and exaggerated. So it's all about the interpretation that we learn and we understand, like we humans that come, or people that come from Germany or Europe here, we understand the culture at home. We need to learn the culture here and translate it. And basically then, for example, when we would reach out to business units, we would always have 2 or 3 paragraphs. Mm-hmm. This is why it's relevant to you. Okay. And no high-level words, high-level, statements, precise description why. And why did we start doing that? That was like one of the keys to success. It was not because it needed to be right, but it was because you showed the person you care actually about the department. You're trying really hard. And obviously, yeah, they're smart people. They know that you're an outsider who's learning. Yeah. But through trial and error, first of all, you get it right the 3rd or 4th time. And also you show them respect that you are not just throwing something over the fence. And I was on the other side for a long time receiving those emails from several other central departments. At some point, to me, mentally, I just realized, they become just spam. I don't even look at them.
But just to be clear, you did not work for Hella before.
I did.
For how long?
After high school, I got a scholarship from Hella. They studied double E in Stuttgart together with Hella. Then I worked there for 4 years in Lippstadt, in the headquarters. Okay. And then 2 years in Detroit.
Interesting. I did not know that. I should have done my homework.
It's a very, very, very at the very beginning of the resume. It's nothing flashy. But
for the audience, this is actually hilarious because it's a small world. We are sitting here at the famous Battery Club in San Francisco. I have been here in the Valley for 33 years. And in my previous life, before I studied computer science in Paderborn, I literally was working at Hella for 5 years in Lippstadt to do my German apprenticeship. And then I went there full time, responsible for the telephone system, the electricity, and all of that stuff. Nordwerk and Hauptwerk. I was born 5 minutes from Lippstadt and born and raised in a city called Stürme de Geseke.
Yeah, I played soccer against these guys.
Oh my gosh, we may have played. Well, I'm too old for that, but this is actually hilarious. It's a small world. I did not know that.
Yeah.
The reason why I'm asking that is because if you're on the venture side, but you just answered my question, actually. You had the advantage to understand the company and the business units. It's not like, like a glass ball and you're just guessing what they may or may not find. You had an idea what may be needed within the corporation. And did the business units give you a guideline of wish list to look for, or you looked with your own gut feeling and tried to match that with the requirements that you think needed to be looked at in Lippstadt?
Completely positively, naively, without structured plan, very instinct driven, and basically just started matching things in my head. Like I'm a very curious person. I like to learn pretty much about anything that there is to learn about. So I knew most products already, and so then it started becoming not that difficult when you see a startup company having a specific technology, or this could actually fit to them. My strength is the creativity of matching things. My weakness is sometimes, the communication sometimes with specific people that don't want to necessarily work with you. So where you would get a bunch of excuses. Mm-hmm. Took me about 6 months to figure that out, that those were excuses. I'm like, okay, they don't want to work with us. So the other takeaway was you need quick wins because people are skeptical. You're coming from Lippstadt and you're living in Silicon Valley. Like the default that you got to be aware of is people think you're having a great time here, and most of the time you probably spend at the beach because they think LA is San Francisco. But you got to be cognitive of that. And so what I learned then is people that don't want, even if it would make a lot of sense, just stop engaging with them, find the ones that want to work with us. And then hopefully at some point that will change.
Why would somebody not be open for external innovation, inspiration that enhances my own business, besides one reason which happens a lot in corporation, and that's that non-invented here syndrome that you run into a lot?
I think this would go way beyond the 30 minutes, but I think one of the main reasons that it's impossible to see from outside is how much political capital does this person have right now in the organization? Especially when you're young, you have no clue that you look up to these people. They're like 5 levels above you. You cannot possibly imagine that they might actually have also stressors in their workday and work life. Maybe they are under a microscope by the CEO. You just can't imagine that. And obviously, typical German companies, lifelongers, employees and managers often, or at least lifelongers in the same industry, they know their products in and out. They're very smart. They can, in so many ways, give you arguments why it doesn't work that you barely understand. Like, at least for me, that I barely would even be able to verify or not. Yeah. But what I learned then at some point is, they don't want to for a specific reason. And why not? Well, it's risky. There's a high likelihood it won't work out. Time is obviously another thing. Mm-hmm. But I think if you're trying persuasively enough and you find a good fit, people find time to agree. And then really building allies with the people that want. And then that started trickling then. I remember my first conversation was 5. I brought a startup CEO to Lippstadt, had on the other side 5 gentlemen from Hella, all with a PhD. Not going to name what department, but everyone was sitting like this. So, yeah, you tell us now about our business, huh? I was like,
I've been there in these meetings. Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
Like,
yeah, it's embarrassing.
It's going to be really easy here, huh?
Yeah.
But those same people turned years later and became actually allies. Okay. But I think the only way to do it is not with words, but with action. Heads down. So I said, we're not going to talk to the press. We didn't talk to the press for the first 5-6 years. So I'm like, what is there to talk about that we started a POC with a company? It was nothing special. You got to create real results that are worth talking about, and then we can talk about it. But yeah, it took 5-6 years to have those results. And but the other takeaway that I have is, I think corporate VC in the long run is very difficult because there's so many factors that change the environment constantly, meaning macroeconomically can change. The customer of the corporate could, struggle and, push the struggle down the supply chain. So basically, then you have rotation of management constantly every 5-6 years.
Look at Hella with the acquisition, right? So now you have management changes and directional changes and things like that.
Exactly.
That's a big deal.
It's a huge deal, but I would say not for the reason that most people think. It's because most people think like, oh, you need the CEO that is a sponsor or a CFO, and then when that person leaves, then you're screwed. Well, that is clear. Like, if you know that from the beginning, then make sure you're not dependent on this one person having a passion for venture capital, but the results need to be so crystal clear with a small footprint also, not blown up team, that it explains itself. So I always said, guys, we don't have KPIs actually. The moment they want to give us KPIs, we're doing something wrong. And it said the same thing many times to the manager. I'm like, you tell me what KPIs work in every future situation, although I don't know what the future situations are going to be. And we'll adapt them. And the answer then was always, well, but we got to measure it somehow. Like, look, the moment you feel you got to actually measure it, call me. But right now, do you feel you have to measure it? So we actually...
It's interesting. I noticed on your LinkedIn, compared to other VCs, you had you have advisory boards and whatever you may have. And what struck me with yours is the amount of portfolio companies that you were involved in, and the respectfully, I have to say, complimentary amount of exits. So you seem to have some kind of a good feeling. Either it's your process, your gut feeling, or your talent or something, but you have a very impressive portfolio list of exits. What's the secret, if there is one?
I mean, it's hard to describe, to be honest. We were talking earlier before we started the interview about it, that I think I always had this, if I look back, actually, let's go a step back. If I look back to my childhood, I never felt drawn to people that were rich or that were, somehow better in society than I was. I just liked a very specific type of person to hang out with. Humble, smart, curious, funny. And when I look at my friends now, after we all grew up, most of them are pretty successful, but they became successful. And looking back now, slowly I start believing it's simple share that I like those type of people and recognize those traits. If I look back, every single founder that we backed has those traits.
Okay.
And
so you're coming from the psychological point of view, so to speak.
Yes, because everything else can be taught or corrected and changed. And I think that's a lot of that's what people often miss is you can't really change the brain of the person you're investing in.
Mm-hmm.
Elon would say something else.
Yeah.
But
okay. There's always an exception to the rule.
Yes. But you can change everything else. You can change the go-to-market. You can change the way the product is sold, to whom the product is sold. That's easy. It's things that take a month and it's corrected. Yeah. I think that's also another big opportunity that a lot of my peers are leaving on the table is by looking for a company that does exactly what they're looking for. Instead of saying, this is an amazing team, everyone else is going to pass because of something that is totally irrelevant. Meaning, I met, for example, a great founder who's working on a radar company. We had an amazing exit. My co-founder now had an amazing exit with a radar company, but it's a tough business. It's a low margin business. Yeah. High volume, low margin. Yeah. So what I recommended was, hey, I recognize that they build internal tools that actually shorten the R&D time significantly. So I'm like, it would be probably much easier to sell that tool to those same organizations. You still need, your samples to get into the door. Because if you think about it, nobody says Autodesk developed this cup. No, I developed this cup. No, in this case, exactly. Yeah. And so you avoid a non-invented here issue and time to market. And when you find this type of founder, they're stubborn for long in the long run, but very, very flexible in the short run. And so that's the honest answer. The honest answer is the intangible, and then you can build on it.
So if anybody listens here who is a founder and wants your attention, give them maybe 3 pointers, very quick, precise, how to get your attention. What in your head is your list to go through the priorities?
So it's very simple. You're fighting as a founder, and I notice it myself now, building a new venture firm, that you're fighting for people's attention today. And your biggest competition is actually not your peers or other funds. It's Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. So like everything in your phone that is basically, with data scientists, the best data scientists that the world has, like optimized to grab your attention. So that's your biggest competitor and enemy actually as a founder. So if you write a long LinkedIn cold email, cold outreach, it doesn't literally matter what's in there. The issue is people won't read it. So a very short message. Hey, we're both friends with so-and-so. I think you will like my deck. There's a very high likelihood I'm going to click on that link.
Okay. Interesting.
What I would highly recommend not to do is to try some type of FOMO games, fear of missing out games, while cold outreaching. It's just like, and as a VC, just imagine we get 10 to 100 of those requests per day on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
I'm like, guys, you're doing a cold outreach to me, and you're trying to tell me that you have so much interest that I have to move fast. Why are you reaching out?
On that one, I 100% agree with you. I have seen this way too many times, playing one against the other when you really have no leverage in the first place. That can actually backfire big time if you get caught.
Yes.
So you have to be careful with it.
I don't understand why it makes sense once there is momentum.
Yeah, but then you have the true leverage and you can play the card.
Yeah.
Don't do it too early.
Yeah.
Interesting. So maybe just now come to the point, the end of enterprise SaaS navigating the Gen AI shift from VCs and founders. You are feeling very strongly about these topics. Tell us more.
Yeah, so instead of the way I look at Gen AI is very simple. I think it's very hard to invest in those tools unless it's a foundational model, maybe foundational architecture, really something that would compete with an OpenAI. It sounds crazy, but it's very big.
Compete or sitting on top of it?
Compete. I think sitting on top is very dangerous.
Okay.
Because we saw it in 2023. You saw so many wrapper companies that are so thin wrappers that sometimes you could like literally see ChatGPT still through the wrapper, and it's just too easy for three things to happen. Number one, if there's a technological shift, like another step function, GPT 4.5, let's say, it could be that it's really good at what you're doing naturally, and no one needs it. Mm-hmm. Good example. Well, maybe we won't talk about examples here, but the second thing is the moment you show me your product, I can copy it, because often it's just a mask and a few prompts. And then the third thing was I don't remember now.
But hold on, but hold that thought for a second. If you look at the last 12 months, since the whole world is talking about ChatGPT, and there are so many startup companies coming here with, batch 1, batch 2, delegations, you name it. The ecosystem here is booming at the moment. Aren't they all pretty much, and not all, I have to be careful, aren't way too many of them also like me too, sitting on top of something? And most likely we run into the same problems that the same pets.com flavor 25 did in the internet boom, and only one survived because we only need one. We don't need 25 flavors.
I think it's way worse, actually. It's way worse than the specific internet example that you just gave, because those are businesses. The internet basically took everything from the physical world into the digital world. Mm-hmm. Like Amazon is really just, the basic idea is Walmart online. And that creates so much efficiency that, that alone is a great idea. So you had like a lot of people doing the same thing. With GenAI, it's much worse in my mind, because number one, everyone can copy it the moment they see it. Number two, often it's not even needed, meaning the initial traction often is there, but then the population slowly starts figuring out, oh, this is really, I can do the exact same thing with ChatGPT and don't have to pay $10-20 extra. And then I think the developer day of OpenAI was also very interesting. That was probably the most predatory thing I saw. But I must say, heads down to OpenAI, because instead of playing only like the AWS role, we are like basically infrastructure. No, like those were companies, significant amount of companies that really just repackaged the brilliance of what OpenAI built. And that shouldn't have been funded in the first place. I personally think that was more a function of the market that we're in, because VCs in general, like, they're very educated people. The problem was in early 22, the interest rates changed so significantly that literally every company in your late stage portfolio is most likely overvalued because we changed the number one rule of the game.
Yeah.
And so the attention of most VCs was on that, or it still is. And so I think that took away a lot of time to study the technology part. And that was one advantage that I had in that moment, that I could actually take the time and play around and understand the tools and understand how the theory behind works. But I would highly, if I was a founder, I would not want to wake up in the morning and learn that I got replaced by something else that was completely outside of my control. That is actually the main reason why I would.
Okay, so GenAI sitting on top of an OpenAI long-term may not be the smartest thing. But what strikes me is when you said you see the end of enterprise SaaS, what exactly do you mean by that? That's a pretty bold statement.
Yeah. I think most people will agree, actually. Two things. I'll give you an example. Large language models are really good at finding patterns in unstructured data. So the first thought that everybody probably had, and including me, when they saw GPT 3.5 coming to market, is that logistics will be an amazing application for this. Then GPT-4 came to the market with a much higher reasoning ability, and things like AutoGPT started popping up, where you use GPT-4 as a reasoning engine to operate existing tools. So then, if you continue thinking that through, in the moment you have decent enough reasoning ability, everyone that, companies like SAP will win, because the only thing that matters at that point is the distribution of the product. And they have long-term contracts with literally every industrial company on the planet. The UI might be slow. This is exactly typically how they would have been displaced at some point, because the entire architecture is built on an outdated platform.
Yeah.
But now you just build an agent that you can talk to, then operates the tool for you, and that's it. That's a thin wrapper on top of their own data. They control the entire data, the entire infrastructure. To me, that's game over. For example, in logistics, if you want to compete directly with SAP, there's obviously there are going to be some brilliant founders figuring out some corner cases where it still makes sense. But this is a major field where enterprise SaaS companies would actually thrive.
So let's unwrap that for a second, because if I'm now an entrepreneurial founder of some sort and I see some problem statement, use cases, trying to connect them, on one hand, you can say what you just said, which is the big establishments, the Salesforces, the Workdays, the SAPs, they are controlling the customers, they control the relationships, they have the platforms. So pretty much it's almost game over when the game hasn't even started. At the same time, I would think there's always an opportunity as a founder, if you actually develop your solution to solve a particular problem, as long as you focus heavily on APIs and libraries to connect and hook to these platforms. Because the platforms by itself, they have smart people, they have AI experts, and they will develop. But at the same time, as we both have worked in the corporate world, they're slow. It's non-invented here syndrome, and they have, other business unit strategies that they have to execute against. That's why there's, I believe, always an opportunity for a startup to come from left field. But are you really strongly saying it's pretty much game over because they will do it anyway? Or just saying, Mr. Founder, just be careful. As long as you hook yourself or attach yourself with APIs to these platforms, you should be okay.
I mean, there's always corner cases, and we all have, experiences that drive our opinion, and obviously they're biased by definition. So that's my opinion that is driven by my experience. You have a lot more experience. So you probably, even with this example I described, might see opportunities still that I don't see. But building an AutoGPT agent-ish on top of an existing architecture like SAP is easy.
Mm-hmm.
Like I'm a bad engineer and I can do it.
All right.
The way that it functions, it will break at some point.
Yeah.
But if I can do it, like a talented coder, a team can do it very, very easily. So the problem that I see is the same with Microsoft and PowerPoint. For example, I've seen a lot of VCs invest in PowerPoint tools. To me, distribution is the most important key here, meaning who has access to the customer that can pay. Yeah. And that's Microsoft. Yeah. And they have so many other products that it's impossible to displace them as a whole. Yeah. I mean, not even Google has managed to do that. Although on average, their products are more interconnected, more modern. So even if your product isn't like on par with the best tools out there, maybe 10%, 20% worse, in my mind, no chance, because of what we learned in big corporate. There's no reason to take risk on a tool that is then connected to an LLM that somehow looks like a black hole. Mm-hmm. And although you get all the guarantees that it's not a black hole, why would you risk it? It took you 30 years or so to get to the top of this organization, or 20 years. Now you can enjoy a high salary, that build wealth. It's very unlikely that this type of person or top executive will take a existential risk. Okay. And so I think it's very difficult. And that the only recommendation I would give a founder, try to think it through when you start such a business. From today till, let's say, 3 years from now, 2 years from now, where you are beyond the first pilots, but real rollout. What is between today and you that could take you out? If ideally, there's nothing besides execution. If you do this right, I mean, there's always black swans. But I'm not talking about black swan, I'm talking about things that you actually see.
Well, execution or speed of execution, or both?
Both. I mean, speed needs to be by definition high, but I think
well, in some European culture, as we are all being perfect and, everything needs to be organized, we are very well with that. But when it comes to agility and speed, we may not be the fastest. And then somebody else who is not as perfect will overroll us because they were first time to market.
Yep.
That's a reality.
It's a reality. We've seen it. We've seen it Microsoft and Apple back then.
Yeah.
And here it's just way worse that the market is already controlled. And so the way I think more about it, from our perspective, it was that it's going to be much, much harder to compete in this AI space in general when you look at the service industry, because these are more modern companies, and most importantly, they are founder-led. Founders take calculated risks. When founders say we go that way, people do it. The industrial space is very rarely founder-led. So it's very unlikely that in the industrial space, somebody's going to take existential risk. That gives opportunities to startups in many ways, in my mind. But the easiest way that I always talk about is, okay, we talked about foundational models. That's one way to go. The other way is just use tools that are much more advanced. And the only thing you need to understand is your competition in the industrial space is very likely not allowed to use those tools and will always be a year or two behind the most advanced models. And that's a competitive advantage that I think didn't exist before, that startups can take advantage of.
So in closure to this conversation, first of all, this is a fascinating conversation. I really like it. Maybe to close on this one, for the next 12 to 24 months, with your own fund and with what you have seen in the market so far, what trends do you see? What development directions you see are more favorable than others? And if you can give some of these founders some pointers or hints, with your view, what are you looking for to invest in with your own fund?
Yes. Coming from a low margin supplier background, I would say the number one thing we learned when it comes to business model is try to at least have a path where you control your own destiny. And what I mean with that is it could be that you are totally vertically integrated and have direct access to the customer. Mm-hmm. And which is something I thought is impossible in a high rate environment. But with the tools that we have now, that is a strong force against that. So it allows with much smaller teams to be much faster. Okay. So try to be sure that you don't have a supply on the supply side or on the customer side, somebody who has massive leverage against you or over you. So I would always say try to find industries or products that you can build where you can sell through a large organization, but you don't have to. At least if I wake up in the morning, I would always feel very anxious if I knew that I could wake up and, I don't know, my industry decided that this product is not needed anymore. Yep. Or another thing I would recommend highly is, I don't believe that hardware is worse than software investments. I think that's a complete wrong misinterpretation. The right interpretation, from my experience, and this could be wrong, but hear me out for a second, is software has the advantage that with very little money, you can find out very quickly if there's product market fit. Yeah. The beauty with hardware is, especially with the simulation environments that we have today, and they're getting rapidly a lot better, hardware investments can look very similar to software investments in the sense that you don't have to spend 50 million to find out in 5 years to find out if the product even works. Not even talking about product market fit. You can simulate a lot. You can focus on what I always say, maybe not new science, but hardware integration, and focus on a strategy that creates a feedback loop of data. Your own data that is produced only by your products and nobody has access to it. Yeah. That is a very powerful combination if you then also control or have direct access to your customer. So that way, with $1 million or $2 million, you can test out this hardware, product market fit, or I call it product market fit indication. You can prove that and then go for much larger rounds.
So what I'm hearing is you don't shy away from hardware investments or early stage hardware investments.
Correct.
You actually embrace it.
Yeah, I think it's much, much safer compared to software now, because not only do the big companies that have the distribution have a huge advantage in enterprise SaaS now. Mm-hmm. The next thing is the moment they see your product, they can just copy it. Yeah. It's too easy today to copy software, and it's going to get way worse because today, if you ask ChatGPT, let's say, find a way around these 5 patterns in an uncensored LLM, it's going to find okay answers. Okay. Give it a year or two, it's going to find perfect answers. In my mind, the entire IP landscape needs to be rethought in that sense. Yeah. And on the software side, it's so hard to patent things anyway already. So yeah, basically the moment you show your demo, why should they buy your company?
Could be obsolete in 6 months from now.
Exactly.
On that note, I really appreciate the conversation. I would like to give you an open invitation to have a follow-up conversation in a few months, see how the world is actually changing. Let's see if enterprise SaaS is dead. We'll see. But I really appreciate it. And I actually learned a lot, particularly when it comes to our roots back in Germany.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.
Appreciate it.